Join us today on the Final Hour podcast as we discuss Iran's ring of fire surrounding the nation of Israel.
We interrupt your program to issue a severe warning for an impending emergency making its way to your area. We urge you to be watchmen of the times and to be prepared with the essential knowledge and supplies for the wake of the final hour.
Welcome to the Final Hour podcast, coming to you from the original Living Word Christian Center.
That's right.
Out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. My name is Jim Hammond.
I'm Lonaiah Farrell.
And I'm John Gap.
And we have producing.
I wanted to
You wanted to fix it from last week?
I jumped on it a little too
I don't even think I finished saying Farrell, and you're like, John Gap?
Right. I wanted to let it breathe.
Thank you.
And we have our producer, Jerry.
Hello.
Hi, Jerry.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
The
Hi.
dulcet sounds of Jeremiah.
I'd listen to him if he did.
As you can see here, we'll just open up here.
That would be a good one.
I want to give you an update on Israel, but just quickly, we have Lonaiah with her Starbucks, and if I will say this, that if you will check the kids section in Target, don't tell me they're not actively into trying to make a point. Okay, Stephen Furtick wears All Saints, right? You ever seen what their insignia is? It's a goat's head, right? Last I checked, that's a satanic symbol.
Yes, it is.
Right? We could go on and on and on. That's all I'm saying. Basically, Caribou. Oh, you can't go to.
If you go to Kingdom Coffee, downtown Maple Grove.
That's what. Okay,
I prefer it.
That's very true.
If they had a drive-through, I would be there.
Absolutely.
I'm about convenience in life.
That's very, very true. But you don't have a Kingdom Coffee on every corner.
Yeah, it's not everywhere.
Yeah, they are
It's
great.
not ubiquitous. It's
And just like you don't have a Target.
Location.
They're out of
you know,
my way.
Just
sorry.
like there's Targets. You go to Target because they have everything.
It's more on
Right.
your way than.
But if you think
Target
Target is not a left-leaning organization, go to their kids section and then come back and tell me. All right.
But you look at these stores, like now that we're talking about it, Target, Starbucks, they're like everywhere. Yeah. You think they're already setting us up for our little 15-minute cities?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Just a thought.
Absolutely.
That was a good thought.
But okay, go ahead.
Boy, don't get me started.
On the 15-minute cities?
Don't even get me started. Maybe we could get me started. I don't know.
It'd be
Let's
nice.
keep moving. Let's go on.
Thanks, John.
You have my permission.
I don't know if we should just start over or what.
What?
Should we keep going?
Keep
All
going.
right. All right. Sorry about all that. And anyways, quickly, last Friday, 34 rockets were launched from southern Lebanon into Israel, of which the Iron Dome intercepted 25. 5 fell, and by the way, each one of those is $80,000. Every single one of those hits. 5 fell on Israeli territory, some inside Israeli communities. 3 mortars were fired at a community called Metula.
That's $2 million on rockets.
Yes, in just a few minutes.
That's crazy.
This is last Friday. All this is happening on Western Galilee. This is from a great. Now they email us. I was at it's called the Alma Center. It's on the border of Lebanon and Israel, and that's all they do.
It's great content.
They watch Hezbollah and they report. Okay, that's all they do. They just watch Hezbollah, and we get off the bus to go look at these tunnels that Hezbollah spent 10 years trying to dig into Israel, right?
Just
so they could attack them.
Yep.
And using high-tech equipment, tunnels so big as this room, you could move
trucks through.
You can run trucks through. So, and the Israelis discovered the tunnels. There were 5 of them, 10 feet. All right, but imagine living like that, where there are people tunneling. Let's say you live in Plymouth.
Yeah.
And there are people in Maple Grove that want to kill you. So they are tunneling under the ground so they could, ambush you.
Yeah.
And this is the way the Israelis live on every border.
We do have some of that on the southern border of the United States, where cartels do that same thing.
Coming over and killing us?
I mean, maybe not directly.
Because I can tell you, if Hezbollah comes over, they're going to kill.
Oh, yeah,
They're not coming for any other reason.
Right.
Right. Agreed.
But all this is happening in the Western Galilee, right above this lady. She runs the Alma Center above her house. There were 30 of us in the yard for a holiday dinner. We filmed the interceptions from the balcony. Wow. I knew we had 15 seconds to run to the shelter, but mine is only 2 square meters, so they just stood out in the yard and watched. I think that's the point you get to when you have rockets flying over your house.
Man.
Probably.
And, all the time. At the tactical level, the organization that carried out the attack is probably Hamas from Lebanon. Okay? Hamas is now in Lebanon, not just Hezbollah. 2 different radical Muslim groups.
Right.
One Sunni, one Shiite, with the encouragement or assistance from Hezbollah. They're supposed to be enemies, but they hate Israel so bad that they merge. And it's clear, in reality, Israel's northern border is the west front with Iran. It is also clear that Iran's leaders think Israel's weakening from within right now. And this is an Israeli writing this. And American support for Israel and Iran's opposition in the Middle East is also weakening. American support for Israel and their support against Iran's opposition against Israel. And recently we've seen widespread incitement on Arabic social networks around the Alaska mosque issue, the Black Mosque.
Black Dome.
Yes, up there on the Temple Mount. And so even before Ramadan began, Israel was accused of not allowing Muslim prayers on the Temple Mount. This is what you see on the news. If you look at CNN.
Yeah, they're not letting them on it right now.
And what happened with that? In the first 2 weeks of Ramadan, tens of thousands of Muslim worshipers came to the Temple Mount. 2 days ago, everything turned upside down when young Muslims barricaded themselves in the mosques, prevented the worshipers from leaving, and vandalized the furniture inside the mosques. Why do they do that? Because they know it's going to get reported against Israel.
Right,
They've done this before.
Yep.
And during these hours following the incitement on social networks, there are now disturbances by Arab teenagers, even inside Arab villages in the north, creating insecurity on the roads. Yesterday, Hezbollah's media published a video on social media about the voice of Hezbollah's Secretary General clarifying in the background. It is essential to mention that today the first official meeting of the foreign ministers of Iran and Saudi Arabia was held. That was last week.
Held in China.
Yeah, in China. It is the level of the superpowers that should worry us.
Yep.
There's Israelis talking here. I'm writing an Israeli out of the Alma Center. You can look it up, ALMA. All right, and you can find out so much that's going on day to day, and they'll even send you emails if you
sign up for it on their website.
So it is the level of superpowers that should worry us. We are pawns in a much broader chess game that is taking place in the struggle between the United States, Russia, and China. And the Middle East is the playground. The Saudis do not see the Chinese or the Iranians as allies. All right? But the Saudis feel insecure in their relations with the United States and fear the development of the Iranian nuclear project. This leads to an interest in maintaining open channels, right? So the Saudis are saying, if the U.S. can't help us like they have, all right, then we have to maintain an open channel with Iran because we know they're close to the bomb. And all of this is beyond deep economic interests in Syria, Iraq, Yemen. The Saudis, and like them, the Emirates, do not want to leave these arenas to the Shiite axis. All right. So they feel like they have to make a deal. They're making a deal because the U.S. is inactive. All right. And so last week we started talking about what Iran is doing on the Syrian border. But
Very
before that, I feel like we have to look, just a quick review. I had the honor of taking a Jeep tour of the northern border of Israel, southern border of Syria, a strip of land that the Israelis won from the Syrians in the 1967 war. Very strategic strip of land when you're talking from a military point of view. And I did explain the Syrians would sit up there on top of the Golan Heights and rain down artillery, shoot it over the Galilee, the body of water Jesus walked in, shoot it right over the Galilee into the city of Tiberias, a thriving city.
Wow.
So the Israelis win that thing back, push the Syrians back towards Damascus. And, I'm in this Jeep driving through anti-tank ditches. Then you go through a vineyard. Then you're passing minefields from the 67 and 73 wars, where the Syrians and Egyptians and Jordanians all attacked Israel at the same time. That the Israelis they fenced off these minefields with signs and just covered in barbed wire. And you're passing some of the best tanks in the world, something called the Merkava. And their positions, you can just about see, their Israeli tanks, you can just about see Damascus from where we are on a clear day, where we were. And we had an amazing briefing from this man, ex-Israeli soldier, right there on the border. And so we're talking about the Syrian army in 2011, 75% Muslim. The Syrian population, Sunni Muslim, 75% Sunni Muslim, this population and the army both. We started to talk about how Iran, since the Syrian civil war, has moved in with a proxy army of militia that is commanded by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard officers.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, okay.
And so we got the Russians with an air base. It was chaos for a while for the Israelis, because suddenly it went from a standing army of Syria, who they knew very well, to a much smaller Syrian army, because of a lot of the Sunnis defected out of the Syrian army and formed all these different militias after the president of Syria had his Sunni Syrian troops firing on their Sunni relatives, sometimes their neighbors, maybe their brothers, their sisters, people from their tribes, because the Syrian population was revolting. So Assad tells his army to shoot to kill. And so Assad loses 2/3 of his army, defects, leaves, quits, takes their weapons, and suddenly you've got all these different players on the Israeli border, these militias. Some are fighting for their tribe, some are fighting for their village, some are straight up freedom fighters, and some played into the hands of Al-Qaeda and Al-Shabaab and all these terrorist groups, and they declare jihad. And they wind up with the jihadists. All these multiple players.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So Israelis trying to figure all this out. And as we know, in 2018, the Syrian army, backed by disciplined, highly trained Iranian militia troops, commanded by highly trained Iranian Republican Guard officers, a much smaller Syrian army, also backed by the Russian Air Force, got control, right? And we talked about, they started moving the original families out. They relocated them to northern Syria, a place called Idlib, and they start moving in Shiite Muslim families into this area. You know, the Ayatollah Khomeini, the evil regime running the country of Iran, the Shiite, and we kind of went a little deeper into the whole Shiite Sunni thing last week, a little bit into the history, because it's something you have to know about if you're really going to understand this. We left off explaining that the Iranians put up 50 mosques, 200 religious centers. They've bought 8,000 properties in Syria. They've got control of 20% of the capital of Syria. They've changed the street names. We talked about all that.
Crazy.
They're building mosques, religious centers, universities, hospitals, renovating 250 schools. They're teaching Farsi instead of Arabic. They have Persian culture instead of the Syrian history. Okay, and they're going to fight from all these mosques, hospitals, schools, religious centers. What do? They put missile teams in these things. So when the Israelis hit back, it's on the news. The Israelis just hit a hospital. And they shoot missiles. This is their playbook.
Right.
All this stuff is going up. on the border of the Golan Heights.
Yep.
The Israelis openly spoke of being way more concerned of the Iranians and what they're doing in Syria, all right, than the 50,000 highly trained Hezbollah troops sitting in Lebanon,
Right.
Iranian-backed, than the 16,000 Hamas terrorist troops estimated down in the Gaza Strip.
Yeah.
With 30,000 mid, short range, and long range rockets. There's 30,000
That's
mid,
crazy.
short range, long range rockets just in the Gaza.
Can I
in the
say
South.
one thing last night that I learned? And I'm reading this book. It's called The Son of Hamas. It's his name is Moshe Yosef, and his dad is one of the 7 Hamas leaders. Because I was kind of wondering why the Muslim people or why the Muslim groups get to have so much power. And in it, he said, without a constitution to maintain some semblance of order, religious laws become the highest authority. So that's why these groups like move in and they become the highest authority, because they don't have any laws. So the leaders of these groups just
Right.
become their own laws. And then he's like, they're allowed to interpret their own laws, and each group has its own kind of laws. So that's why you have all these like subgroups and all these groups that do their own things.
Well,
It was very interesting. I was like, oh, that makes sense. Because you wonder
what's
how.
the name of that book?
The Son of Hamas. It's actually really good.
Interesting.
It's
It
about
is.
a Hamas terrorist that
So
turned
he-
into a Christian.
Yes.
Okay. And
He's
so
been in the United States since 2011. His dad is one of the 7 guys who started Hamas
Wow.
and in the Gaza Strip to attack Israel. And he's like, yeah, we would just be teenagers bored, so we'd throw rocks at the IDF, and then they'd come after us, and then they would start, they'd pull
Yeah.
people out and start questioning people who did it. And it was just a bunch of teenagers just bored trying to stir up problems because they knew what it would do with the Israelis, that they would come in and attack.
Well, now they've got 3 walls down there.
Right.
And they're not even manning the walls. We'll get to Gaza, right?
Right.
I mean, I was looking at these walls up close. Huge walls. Thick walls that you can't see, and they've got towers sitting on the top of them. The Israelis in the towers, they're not even manned. They won't even put troops on the walls, but these towers have guns with cameras, and if it's interesting, so they're females that are operating these guns, but they are not on the wall, and it's all by remote control. And the females, I think, because they're more observant, they have females watching these cameras at all times when they female soldiers, and when the Palestinians approach the wall, the first wall, they take the machine gun from a computer at another location, and they shoot at their feet. There's video. You can look this up. You can see this stuff online, right? And so, but why? Why is all this going on? Because the Hamas has shot 4,400 rockets into Israel
Right.
from the Gaza Strip.
Right.
Wow.
All right. Since Bush made Israel hand over that land to the Palestinians, his land for peace deal
Big mistake.
in the early 2000s, what did Israel get? They got land for peace? No, they got rockets for land. They hand over land, they get rockets.
Right.
Right.
Interesting.
So in 15 years, 4,400 rockets. That's 300 rockets a year. Usually they come by the hundreds at a time.
Right.
Right. And it's just in the South with the Palestinians, Hamas. Iranian funded Hamas.
Right.
It doesn't matter if Hamas is Sunni and the Iranians are Shiites. They get together. Enemies, okay? They get together. Enemies of my enemy is my friend, right? That kind of thing. And so people don't believe that Iran is funding Hamas in Gaza. They absolutely are, all right? And all this going on, this is a daily thing. The Israelis hitting targets with their jets in Syria
Yeah.
almost every day.
Right.
I would call it a low-scale war,
Right.
playing a very careful game with the Russians,
Right.
because the Russians have extremely, really, really good anti-aircraft batteries. Dangerous, okay? And they made the international news, the Israelis did, for bombing the Aleppo airport
Yeah.
just a few weeks ago, and everyone criticized them. Of course, CNN
Right.
is saying the Israelis said, under the guise of the earthquake aid, all right, that the Iranians are flying in planes of weapons and rockets into the Aleppo airport, saying it's earthquake aid.
Right.
And the Israelis know it's not.
They're like,
Right.
no way.
And so they wait until everyone gets off the plane, right? They have to wait.
Yep.
because it's a civilian liner.
Right.
And they hit the plane. The Israelis bombed the plane that they know is full of precision-guided rockets. Destroy the runway to keep more planes from coming in. And they get criticized on international news. Bad Israelis. Bad Israelis. You're stopping earthquake relief.
Yeah.
Of course.
Right.
It's not earthquake relief at Aleppo, the airport.
No. And an article just came out today from Israel 365 saying that they were saying it was earthquake relief, but it wasn't.
No, it's full of, and no, you're not going to let them bring in the weapons.
No.
And all that is touching about 1/3 of what we talked about last week in that quick review. Sorry, I reviewed, but if someone just pulled this up, they wouldn't know what I was talking about.
No.
You know, if I just...
Thank you for reviewing, Jim.
If I just started June 2014, keep in mind, the Syrian civil war. You're welcome, Lonaiah.
Thank you.
Keep drinking that Starbucks.
I will.
With
some
those
energy.
54 militias, had been fighting for 3 years at this point. ISIS enters in 2014. Now remember, you've got the Iranians are Shiite, Hezbollah, Shiite Muslim, ISIS is Sunni. ISIS is Sunni. So all those Sunni Syrians that defected from Assad's Syrian army, where are they going to go? They're going to ISIS. Right? And so ISIS promises the world, I don't know if you remember all this, their famous black flag would not just fly in Baghdad, in Iraq.
Right.
They would dominate Damascus. They'll dominate New York, Paris, London, Jerusalem, etc. And at that point, the Syrian war, which was an economic, religious, ethnic, tribal war, turned into what you would call an international civil war.
Right.
With even more players.
Right.
Now you had U.S. in there, 54 militias, and plus the U.S. troops. Some of those militias fighting the Syrians and Russians and Iranians, right? Some of them fighting the U.S. Some of them fighting everyone.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Just anyone that came on in their village.
I mean, there were even wings of that in the South Pacific.
Yes. You had Syrian freedom fighters fighting jihadists. You've also had the Kurds. Now, we haven't even talked about the Kurds, who are generally our allies.
Right.
Mostly Christian. They were up north fighting. So the Israelis are looking at all this confusion and something that's turned into basically an international civil war in Syria. And remember, ISIS was a real army, so the Israelis look at it like three main groups: the Shiites and Iranians with their different groups, the U.S. had their different groups, and then you had the Russians, right? And at that point, when the Russians came in, no one really knew what they were doing, and they didn't make it completely clear right away. Right. And when you got Iran, got involved in Syria, listen to this. They immediately, this is after the fact, they brought in 8,000 infantry troops out of their regular army. They brought in another 10,000 highly trained troops out of what they call their Republican Guard.
Yeah.
They brought in their militia from Afghanistan. Yes, Iran was fighting in Afghanistan.
Obviously.
Iranian-backed, they call them the Fatah Miyun. They brought them in. They brought in another militia out of Pakistan. Can't even pronounce that name. This is all coming from Israeli intelligence. Wow. Immediately, they're pouring all these groups into Syria. And yet, you have groups that have been fighting in Iraq,
Yep.
and that they brought in. Iran had groups fighting in Iraq. They brought into Syria, but you know what they did? They were taking these troops out of Syria, the Shiite troops, and they were taking them into Iran for 2 months, back to Iran, trained them how they want them to fight.
Yeah.
On Syria terrain, and then put them back and insert them back into Syria. Wow. So this is a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
This is a lot.
I mean, 2 months. That's about the U.S. boot camp.
Yeah.
Time.
Well, some boot camps are 90 days. It depends on which branch, but they've been doing all this all along, taking troops out of Syria, people that convert to Shiite fighters, bring them to Iran, not only training them, but re-equipping them, rearming them, and then sending them back into Syria on the northern border of Israel. The Israelis are following and have been following all these different groups.
Yeah.
And the Israelis realize that suddenly these groups are armed. They're coming back into Syria from Iran with precision-guided missiles with a range of 500 miles. All right?
Wow.
Think about this. The length of the state of Minnesota from the northern border to the southern border is 406 miles.
Right.
All right? So the Israelis are suddenly looking at all these well-armed, combat-seasoned troops running around or stationary. They've got precision-guided missiles with a 500-mile range. This is in Syria. And you know what? We haven't even gotten to Hezbollah in Lebanon. These groups, outfitted by the Iranians, also armed with some of the top-of-the-line anti-aircraft systems, unmanned aerial vehicles, those are drones, UAVs. They're armed and trained to operate all these systems, anti-aircraft systems, precision-guided missiles, drones. Am I talking too much?
No, this is good.
Well, it's very clear to the nation of Israel that Iran is exploiting the Syrian civil war to equip a war machine in Syria that will eventually be able to attack the Israelis and, given enough time, hit them with so many rockets. Because, one thing they're missing is they're missing tanks, right, which is a big piece. They're missing an Air Force, although they have the Russian Air Force.
Right.
If they ever got involved.
And they are... Is there a Russian air base in Syria?
Yes. Yes, there's a Russian air base. Also a Russian naval base. And
Interesting.
And so how would they go toe-to-toe with the incredible Israeli army? It's all about artillery in this case. And all these mortar rounds and all these rockets, mid, short-range, long-range missiles. Keep in mind, it's not just Syria. Wait till you hear about Lebanon. The more war machine that Iran is building in Syria is part of the overall strategy.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, it may seem like they're not able to reach this, and it may seem like they won't be able to do this, but this is what they think. They want a revived Persian empire.
Right.
All right?
Right.
They really do. And we're talking about the Ayatollah Khomeini here. All right? He isn't even Persian, the guy running Iran. The radical Ayatollah Khomeini and the Shiites governing the nation of Iran stole the Persian culture. It's not theirs. And they can steal if they can steal the Persian culture, rebuild the Persian Empire, they can claim the land of Morocco in the west, India in the east, Africa in the south, and some parts of Europe in the north. The old Persian Empire.
Wow.
All right? And that's what they think they should have. That's their end goal. But first, they have to lock down the Middle East, and Israel is in the way. The rest of those countries are weak. Yeah. That's why they're trying to deal with them.
Yeah.
Okay?
Right.
That's why these countries are suddenly going to the table with Iran, because they're not strong militarily, right?
Okay.
So what do you think the Saudi Arabians are sitting at the table with the Iranians for? They're natural-born enemies, Sunnis and Shiites.
Yeah.
Because the Saudis are afraid there's no more support from the U.S. And the Biden administration doing nothing, the Saudis have to make friends.
Well, doesn't that Saudi prince, he doesn't like Biden. He's like come out and said it.
No.
And, I mean, we'll get to it, but like the petrodollar, like they switched to yen. Yen?
Yuan.
You want to talk about it? Is that what you're going to say?
The Chinese currency is yuan.
Oh, it's not yen?
Yen is Japanese.
Okay, yuan.
We talked about this in episode 3.
All the way back in episode 3?
Wow, John.
56 episodes
Glad you have
ago.
a memory like that.
The Saudis, I'm just glad you guys finally said something. The Saudis...
I was listening. That was a lot. It's very
too.
good information. I mean, you're mimicking, what's the word? A whole other culture just so you can take countries over.
Yeah. I mean, the idea, that's a massive region too. It's, I think in the U.S. we all think of the Middle East as it's just a bunch of sand dunes, but it's a massive region with a ton of people.
That's why I'm glad we're learning about this because who knows all this information?
But
I didn't. I mean, I know some of it, but not.
Right.
It's good to be refreshed. I've been to Israel a few times, so I do know some
the
of it.
the Saudis have been forced to the table with their natural enemy, Iran.
Right.
This is brokered by China because they're to place a weakness, especially if Iran gets the bomb.
Yeah.
And the Israelis are saying what gives the Iranians the kind of confidence to say openly we want to rebuild the Persian Empire is the coming nuclear capability. According to the supervisors at the IAEA, the nuclear guys, Iran has enriched uranium. They are holding to a level of 84%. What does that mean? It means they're close to the enrichment they need at a military level.
It was a reason why we had some influence as far as Iran goes in their nuclear capabilities about 10, 12 years ago. But, you know, those international groups, they didn't really hold any power to keep them from doing what we had contractually agreed to. So the U.S. kind of dropped the ball.
Sent them plane loads of money.
Right. 400 million or
Obama sent them a plane load of cash. Here you go.
Yep. Like there was pictures of pallets of stacks, pallets with stacks and stacks of cash. American dollars.
Of course.
This is all coming from a briefing that I got on the Golan Heights. And so once they get the uranium enriched to a military level, they still have to construct the bomb. The Israelites believe that the Iranians probably have the missile that can deliver the bomb, ready to go. They do not believe, from what the briefings that I got to hear, most of the Israelis, we had numerous briefings from all types of political and military leaders on the Rabbi Scheinberg Fellowship Tour with John and Diane Hagee.
Yes.
Which is cool.
The Israelis do not believe, from what I heard in those briefings, that they have developed the warhead, the actual warhead.
Sure.
They've got the uranium at 84%, which is close to a military level. They've got the missile itself that will carry the bomb, but they do not believe the warhead is developed. Now,
actual payload.
These are just opinions now.
Sure.
So this is a lot of this is just opinions. One of the guys that I really had the honor to listen to, you know, he gave that talk outside the abandoned Syrian military headquarters when the Syrians occupied the Golan Heights. It's cool. That building is still there. This is what he said. He said one morning when the Ayatollah Khomeini wakes up, he's like, you guys do not understand the mental process here, how these guys think. He's going to say, oh, Allah has organized the stars in the right way. He's showing me it's time to develop a warhead. Okay? And they will go to work on the warhead. And we have trouble understanding. But the Ayatollah, according to the Israelis, believes that all his thoughts, the guy running Iran, everything he sees, everything he breathes, everything he touches and does,
it's the will of Allah.
Comes from Allah. He believes that Allah is literally lining his body all the way down to his thoughts.
Wow.
Okay? And so if the Ayatollah opens the Quran one day and looks at a certain sentence and believes Allah is directing him to destroy the city of Haifa in Israel, to destroy the city of Tel Aviv, he will order it and have it done without hesitating. And that's why at some point I'm telling you, the Israelis are going to hit Iran, hit them hard to keep this nuclear weapon from being operational. And I believe it is very close. Just how close I think it is, in case it happens this weekend, we are taking this at 10 a.m. on Thursday, April 13th.
Jim likes to be like, see?
Yes. Now think about a guy like the Ayatollah Khomeini who could flip open the Quran one day and think today is the day.
Right.
Every breath he breathes, every thought he thinks, everything he touches is lined by Allah, is dominated by the will of Allah. What if that guy had 5 nuclear bombs? Okay? I love what this guy said, this Israeli who gave the briefing in the Golan Heights. He said, I do not trust the Chinese guy, Xi Jinping.
Xi
Xi Jinping.
Yep.
Or we should just call him Gigi. Okay. Or the Russian guy, Putin.
Gigi.
He says this. He says, I do not trust them. But one difference between the Russian leader, the Chinese leader, and the leader of Iran is the Russians and the Chinese don't have Allah. And that's why I trust them more than I trust the Iranians. And so Ayatollah has Allah talking to him, breathing through him, giving him the thoughts to think.
Sounds like a lot of the Daniel stuff that we went over last year.
Yeah.
You know, the principalities and the powers that are influencing.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah, and you're looking at Lebanon, you're looking at Syria, which are failed states. Okay?
Right.
They are peoples and territories that used to be countries that failed. And you could even put the Palestinians down in the Gaza Strip in this category. They gave the Palestinians all that land. Were made to by George Bush, the younger one.
But why did he get to say anyways? Why did he have a say over that country and what they did with their land? Why?
Because of the
relationship between the United States
give them so much.
and Israel.
They can tell them what to do. And I will say this, the Bushes aren't good people. And and if you think they're good people, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
All right? You don't know what you're talking about. You need to do some digging. And we're all going to find out that one day George Bush Sr. and George Bush Jr. are not good people. And I'm not trying to offend anyone. I'm entitled to my opinion.
Can I say
You're
one
entitled to yours, just like you're entitled to yours on Starbucks and all that stuff, right?
In Jeffrey Epstein's house, there was an artwork piece of George Bush sitting on the floor cross-legged, with towers in front of him. And there was also one of Bill Clinton, Jr. Yeah. So, until I saw that, I was like, wait, why would he have a picture of George Bush?
We'll just stop there, right? Because then we're going to get called a bunch of conspiracy people. I'm just telling you.
That's just a fact.
Let me tell you something.
Follow the names.
Going all the way back into, what was it called? Bohemian Grove?
Yep.
What is that called?
Yeah, you're right.
The Masons and all that?
Yep.
All I'm telling you is they are not good people. Senior was the director of the CIA long before he became president.
Yep.
And we don't have time. Look, all that stuff's going to come out. In the meantime, if you're right in arguing with me, I'm just going to say you don't know what you're talking about. You need to do a deep dive.
Yes.
I know I'm kind of punchy today.
You are punchy.
Okay, but the Palestinians had the chance to create their own country.
Right.
Bush gave it to them.
Right.
They moved 200,000 Israelis out of the Gaza Strip.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Rehomed them.
Yeah, moved them out.
Took
made them
any
pick up
settlement that they had already had there.
Imagine if they did that in Maple Grove.
Right. Moved you out of your house.
You're all moving out of Maple Grove.
Which, have you heard that the somebody in the government is saying if they need land for things, they're going to start to just do eminent domain and take it from people and move them out? I just read that last week. It might be coming in the United States, just United States in general.
Which is insane because there is so much land in the United States.
I just went on a road trip. Can I tell you?
Yeah.
There is plenty of open space and environmental goodness in the world. Yeah. I don't know what else to say. The green energy thing, I just don't get it. I drove 5 states.
Yeah.
Be careful.
Me?
No, I'm just kidding.
You want to be charging your car at 6 a.m. at Target for 2 hours every day? No.
I don't know.
And all those people who think they're helping the world.
They do. Okay. I know. It makes me laugh.
But the Palestinians had the chance to create their own country.
Right.
Okay? Mm-hmm. All this money. Look at how much money they get. They're run by Hamas.
Yep. Yeah.
And we're handing them money on a yearly basis. Not just us.
We give them offices in Washington, D.C.
Yes. And you know what? They're governed by a terrorist organization. And that we give them money for schools, for hospitals, for all these things to feed their population, to start an economy. You know what? It all goes to weapons.
Yeah.
It all goes to weapons.
Those things are not happening. The things that we are giving it towards, the results are not there.
You could rank.
Sounds like a lot of other things we give money to.
Very true.
You could rank the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip right up there with Syria and Lebanon. Failed countries. failed states, failed governments. The Iranians have come into these failed states in Lebanon and Syria. They are financing Hamas in the Gaza Strip. They bring in missiles, rockets, drones, anti-aircraft in Lebanon and Syria, the anti-aircraft batteries. And what they're creating is literally a ring of fire. They are choking the nation of Israel.
Trying.
Yes, 3 weeks ago, Israel had a military exercise with the United States military. And this, of course, this you're not going to see this anywhere. And to kind of make it a point, and we have to thank Joe Biden for at least allowing that to happen. Yeah. The Israeli military in joint exercises with 6,400 American soldiers, 142 American military aircraft. This is just what the U.S. had here, not including the Israelis who they were working with. They had B-52 bombers, American B-52 bombers. They had American aircraft carriers. Yeah. At least one. Yeah. And they had multiple U.S. submarines. They had the best of the American and Israeli strategic military cyber units, which is very important in this day and age. Right. And this was a special show of force that the Israelis needed the Americans to take part in. That's the only thing that works over there, right? Is showing your military strength,
showing that you're not a victim and that you're able to be just taken out without putting up a fight. You have to show it.
We don't understand that here. Okay, the Iranians' goals are to destroy the cities in Israel of Haifa and Tel Aviv, not by launching missiles from Tehran, Iran, right, the capital of Iran, but by launching missiles from Damascus, Syria, Beirut in Lebanon, the Gaza Strip that's inside Israel. The Israelis believe this buildup, this ring of fire, as they called it, they believe from the Gaza Strip, parts of Lebanon, even parts of Iraq and Syria, they are going to face eventually 6,000 missiles being launched at them per day. That. If you add everything up, okay, they could fire 6,000 missiles at them, right, from all directions, right, every day, right. And at that point, you're just overwhelmed, right? Yep. You're just completely overwhelmed, and they believe that that is the point and what's behind the Iran's system of creating this ring, around the nation of Israel. You count up the rockets, and right, count them up, and we're going to do that next week.
And like you were saying last week, they have been incredibly patient. Yes, it was not just a massive buildup right away. It was like clockwork. They just followed their plan. It's taken years and years and years, but we've gotten to this place where Israel is again completely surrounded.
Completely surrounded.
And isn't not Netanyahu? Isn't he making statements on possibly going to war with Iran? I think he is because. I'm not sure. The head of the IAEA, Rafael Grossi, met with Iranian officials on Saturday, and then he issued a statement after that and said it was illegal for anyone to carry out an attack on a nuclear facility. So then Netanyahu responded and said that Grossi made an unworthy assertion, hinting that perhaps the IAEA chief was pressured to say what he did because he was in Iran with his Iranian hosts. Right.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I don't know. If Israel needs to take out a facility to protect themselves, I think.
And then America sent two top military officials there because they said that they wanted to be part of it. Washington apparently needs to be in the discussion if it happens. Okay.
So we're just going to watch that close, and I have so much more, maybe at least one more week to share with you because I want to get to the Lebanon border.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff.
And
for
finish. Sure. We have some things to finish in Syria, but just some of these questions because again, remember we were blocked by the YouTube from going live a couple Fridays ago. Blah blah blah. They yanked episode 55. So it's just some of these questions.
Only on YouTube though. You can listen to it on our other.
Yeah. Well, not the live one.
Spotify. No, not the live one. I'm talking about 55. Number 55.
And
Rumble.
yeah, you can see episode 55 on Rumble, Apple Podcast, or Spotify, or listen to it. And Jake wrote in, this is some time ago, about addressing my question about the fig tree, which we did. He has a follow-up question. He said, if I sit down with a brother and point to Matthew 24:32 and say the fig tree is Israel, they ask me, why is the fig tree Israel? How do I back that up? Are there top three? What are the top three scriptures? Okay. He points out Hosea 9:10 seems like a good one to use. Yes. Hosea 9:10. I found Israel like grapes in the wilderness. I saw your fathers as the first stripe in the fig tree at her first time. Right? It's talking about Israel right here. Jeremiah 24:1-5. The Lord showed me, and behold, two baskets of figs were set before the temple of the Lord. After Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonians, had carried away captive Jeconiah, the son of Joachim, king of Judah, and the princes of Judah, with the carpenters and smiths from Jerusalem, and brought them to Babylon, you had a basket of very good figs, even like the figs that are the first ripe, and the other basket of very naughty figs, which could not be eaten. They were so bad they could not be eaten. Then said the Lord unto me, see this, Jeremiah? I said, figs, the good figs, very good, and the evil, very evil, that cannot be eaten. They are so evil. And the Lord came unto me, saying, thus saith the Lord God of Israel, like these good figs, so will I acknowledge them that are carried away captive of Judah. He's talking about the Israelites as their figs.
Right, the fruit of Israel.
Good, yeah. Good, the fruit, the people, are figs, right? What's the title of that chapter? Coming of Law and Peace. It's talking about Israel, all right? I'm just throwing out some more scriptures for Jake. That was Jeremiah 24:1-5, Hosea 9, chapter 9, verse 10, Micah 4:4. They shall sit every man under his vine, under his fig tree. None shall make them afraid, for the mouth of the Lord of hosts hath spoken of it. Look at the chapter. It's all about Israel. Look at the context of the chapter. Jeremiah chapter 8, I will surely consume them, saith the Lord. There shall be no grapes on the vine, nor figs on the tree, and the leaf shall fade, and the things that I have given them shall pass away from them. Chapter 8 is listed in the King James as punishment of sinful Israel. Again, you have Israel being called figs on the fig tree. And so the nation of Israel is the fig tree itself. And so I'm just giving some information there for Jake.
It's good info.
Great
Did you have a question written in from someone?
Yeah, I did. Did you want me to read it right now?
That would be a great time.
Well, no. Did you have something else you want to do?
Well, it kind of goes with the news, so I was going to save it for that part.
You asked.
I was strategic with my...
Be led. Be led by the Spirit there.
Okay. So we're going to go to the news here. Because we were talking this morning in the hallway to some people about the dollar, the demise of the dollar, how the dollar is losing its
steam.
Yeah, it is. And
juice.
You know who's at the stem of all that? I think we said their name a few times in here. China. Because China has realized that the war in Russia, when Biden, remember when it started and Biden froze the Russian assets here, and everybody was like, no one was buying like the Russian cats and all that stuff.
Russian vodka.
All that. They stopped buying all of it. And he thought it would make the economy collapse, and it didn't. What Russia did was they went to China and they decided to make their own.
It was the start of the BRICS.
It was the start of the BRICS, which we talked about in episode, John, you said episode number 3.
We talked about
a little bit
time.
ago.
Yeah.
But so you have the dollar going away because Russia is now trading in Yuan.
You got it.
And now you have Saudi
Arabia. Chinese dollar.
Right? Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Jim.
Right. Sorry.
Then you have Saudi Arabia last month who met with China to discuss breaking a 50-year track record of only accepting U.S. dollars for oil sales.
Right.
Is that crazy?
Isn't Brazil jumping in on that?
Yes, I'm getting there. Brazil's next. So
huge economy.
Last month, Brazil and China announced a deal to ditch the dollar in favor of their own currencies for trade between the two nations. They're part of the BRICS program. Then you have Mexico wanting to get involved with BRICS. You have France, which John has some stuff to say about France, but France is now going to yuan. So as a number of U.S. dollars, I mean, it's still 28%
Did you say
higher.
India as well?
India.
And I believe Sudan.
You're right. There's probably more that I don't know.
I think there's about 25 total so far.
Trying to dethrone the dollar, which would knock the
this
U.S.
is very serious.
off its perch. Yes.
Very serious.
Extremely serious.
Okay? I mean, most Americans, they're doing their thing. They're going to Starbucks. They're going to Target. They're going to
They
Dayton's.
are.
They're going to...
But when you go to those stores, are you looking at the price tag on things?
They're not paying attention, and they don't care, right? And really, I feel like the Biden administration doesn't care.
Right.
Because there's a lot the U.S. could do, all right?
There is.
And it just goes into the feeling that they want this country to go down.
I agree with you.
That they want this country to go down. There is so much you could do to counteract that. We're doing nothing. You're hearing nothing about it.
Right.
Right? As we watch them squeeze out the American dollar.
Well, and it's very worrying.
So what happens, John? Explain what happens. If everybody starts trading in the
Yuan.
Yeah. Well, we lose a competitive advantage that we have in the dollar being what is traded and what everything is compared to, and things start slipping towards Chinese control over. We've had this dominance in the markets for 50 plus years because of the petrodollar.
Right.
Well, I mean, this is going to we don't have the standing as the superpower that is calling the shots, or at least influencing.
But it could
world
ruin the economy.
Events. Well, exactly.
Well, of course.
I mean, the dollar.
Yes.
What we're talking about, and the bottom line is the dollar. The worth of the dollar could go to nothing.
Right.
I don't know that it's going to go to nothing, but it's going to. We would lose tons and tons and tons of inflation.
Yeah.
And we would not have the world buying power that we currently have.
But this is a thing. All these countries going to the BRICS thing and all these.
Yeah.
Obviously, we know that in the end, there's going to be a one world currency. So this makes me think that this is just one step more towards that, because now you have the Federal Reserve coming out with FedNow, which is the Federal Reserve's digital dollar. They're bringing that out in July.
Yep.
So they are going to be...
They're testing it as of a week ago. They've already started with some test markets.
Yep, with like 7 banks or something. Yep. But that's backed by blockchain. And if you know anything about blockchain, they watch every transaction. And we're just talking to a colleague in the hall, and he's like, what is the word he used about... they're going to be watching your footprint. Yeah. Your social...
your carbon footprint and your social...
You're donating to a church? No, sorry, you can't buy bread anymore for your family. I mean,
because that's
what we're going towards, not what we're at right now.
I mean, even in the United States, there are some politicians that tried to start categorizing certain churches as terrorist groups, terrorist organizations.
But I just want to read Tulsi Gabbard's is that her name? Gabbard? Her tweet, because she was on Fox, and she said, a cashless society espoused by the WEF elite is a society of surveillance where every transaction is tracked, monitored, and controlled by very powerful entities that have the ability to freeze your accounts. We must stand up for our financial autonomy and the right to. And she's saying the U.S. federal government is now coming out with FedNow. What do you think they're doing? Okay, but we did have a listener, Rick, write in and ask. Rick. You want to read that?
No.
Is this a surprise one?
The U.S. federal government has just begun implementing a centralized digital
currency project to bring about a cashless society.
So they don't care. No. Biden and them don't care if the dollar drops in value. Right? Yeah. They don't care. This is what they want.
Well, and
this is why they're not fighting back.
There are U.S. states that are starting to fight this. South Dakota, Kristi Noem was on a couple of news programs a week or so ago.
I love her.
And because there is legislation on all of the different economies in the different states. They all do their budgets and everything at different times, but South Dakota is one of the early ones. But there was language in the Unified Business Code. I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact word of it, but basically it says how the economy of that state will work. and there was language to allow a federal CDBC, and it would basically change the way that state can use currency. And South Dakota, she vetoed it and sent it back to the legislature, said no way.
Good.
Florida is doing the same thing, and Texas is doing the same thing, and they're trying to influence other states to say, no, do not allow this CBDC language into your state economies.
Is it the central banking digital currency?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're saying,
just for some people who don't know that.
They're saying don't allow the Fed to change what money is. Don't allow Fed to take away the power of the actual real dollar and turn it into a current currency, a digital currency.
Well, then Rick says, I've heard the stories that things are progressing to declare the U.S. dollar worthless, and in its place, the central bank will issue digital currency.
Right.
Since that will be the only way for us to buy and sell, would using that be considered a step towards taking the mark of the beast?
I don't think so. I mean, it's a version of currency. I think it's how is it implemented? Do you have to have...
But don't you feel like it's a desensitization because they're going to control?
It's a step.
For sure, it's a step towards.
Because if you don't have a physical dollar anymore, right?
Right.
Which is interesting. A lot of places don't even take cash now. Have you noticed that?
Right. Well,
No,
that's
they
what
don't.
that's
They
what
don't even
happened
take
in 2020 during the
COVID.
pandemic.
Right.
There
We
was
can't touch your money because it's all...
Yep.
My point
Got
is, it
virus
is a
on it.
step, Rick.
Yeah.
It is a step because what happens is because they have control. So you go to Whole Foods, right?
Yep.
You go to Whole Foods and, you know, a step towards the mark of the beast, if it's all digital currency, you're not paying with cash. It's easy to say, oh, you got to have the chip.
Right.
Which
You
some places
got to have the
they
chip in
do
order
hand.
in order to access that money.
Yeah. Right.
So it is a step.
Yeah. It
is
In
definitely.
essence, that is definitely a setup. That's the world's going to need that to control.
It's
Right.
it's not the mark of the beast, but
No.
it
A step.
opens the door.
It's a step towards it.
Yeah.
Right.
That's definitely what Rick said. Thank you for writing in, Rick.
Yes, thank you for writing, Rick.
Richard.
Okay, so I don't know if you guys have heard, but the Biden administration, well, first of all, they're really into this transgender movement. So I think they declared
really
Trans
are.
Day a couple weeks ago. So it was like a Friday. It was like Trans Visible Day where you like paid attention to the trans community.
Instead of invisible.
Yeah, because they think they're invisible, but they're everywhere. So Biden administration releases a new Title IX regulation on transgender issues in schools. So right now, if you're a boy and you want to go play in a girls' sport, they can say, no, that doesn't fit in the Title IX thing. Well, now they're changing that.
Right.
So the Biden administration wants total control in governing ownership over Title IX so they can make decisions for schools. If you are a publicly funded school, you get any aid from the government, they will be able to say you're not allowed to not allow this person to participate in.
In effect, you're going to have boys
Yes.
or people that used to be boys competing in girls' sports. Okay? And that's just going to turn the whole thing into a joke. I'm just telling you.
Yes.
All right? I'm just telling you. I coached both boys and girls high school sports for years, 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds. And if you take boys, an athletic boy,
Right.
and he makes himself a girl, he turns into a girl
You could-
and decides to go start playing basketball, and he was a good high school basketball player, everything's changed.
Right.
Yep.
Everything changed. Do you understand? That boy will be close to unstoppable. All right, and it's nothing on the girls. That's why
You guys-
That's why the boys and the girls have separate.
They do.
sports.
And can I say, I have
for
a
that reason.
15-year-old son, and we were messing around, and he was like, you want to wrestle? And I was like, yeah, sure. So I like went to like pretend punch him, and he just grabbed my wrist, and I was like, and they're going to allow these boys to play against girls? Like, I feel like I'm strong. And I was shocked that he just like grabbed my arm and moved and was like,
Yeah.
that's all you got for me?
Well, I think, over the last 10, 12 years, there's been a real move to, talk about toxic masculinity and kind of really drive down what can qualify as a man and what is masculine behavior.
Yeah.
But over the last year and a half, 2 years, it has been an attack on women, on what is a woman.
Right.
And who can be a woman? I mean, that's the insane question and the insane assertion that there can be something other than a woman can be a woman. That's it. It doesn't make sense.
No. I have a lot to say about that.
But it is what's being asserted right now.
But I don't know if you guys have been paying attention, but there's this girl. She's Riley. Her name is Riley Gaines. She's a Kentucky swimmer, very competitive. Basically held the record for tons of things. She's a Christian. She raced against Leah Thomas last year. Leah Thomas was a boy in swimming. He was like number 423. Switched and became a female and went into the women's swimming and won. But when he raced against Riley Gaines, she's telling her story because she's like, I want people to understand
Can
this.
I just say number 423 with the men?
Yes.
Right.
Switches to the girls, and now he's racing number one.
Right.
Okay.
So him and Riley are in a race. They tie.
Yeah.
Tie. So she's kind of like, oh, this will be interesting. How's this going to go? And NCAA swimming, who's ever in charge of that competition, comes up to her and says, hey, I know you guys tied. We only have 3 spots on the podium. We're going to give the award to Leah Thomas because it looks good for us. It's a good photo op. And she's like, we tied. I should also get the trophy.
Right.
They're like, no, you're actually going to lose this. So you're going to be second place, not first place, but they tied. So obviously Leah Thomas, I'm sure you guys heard it. It was all over last year. They award him the trophy, whatever, and give it to him. And now she's like, I want to fight this because it's not fair because he's stealing spots from women and it doesn't make sense.
And it's just the beginning.
And you guys,
it's just the beginning.
She has been going around to college campuses and talking about this. And she was just in San Francisco last weekend. And they got bullied. She got locked in a room. People were like holding her for their ransom. They're trying to make her pay them money to get out. She got hit in the face twice by a guy who's now a girl. Yes. Yeah. And you know what? I'm proud of that Riley Gaines for standing up and saying something. But this kind of goes with that. So we had a viewer who wants to stay anonymous because of her position. She said, hi, I've listened to your podcast since it came out. I love the truth you are spreading. Thank you. Just thought I'd let you know I'm a nurse in the operating room at Children's Hospital in Minneapolis. This is an extremely liberal organization, and they constantly push a liberal agenda. I found it interesting this week, this was a couple weeks ago, that I went to listen to your podcast during my lunch break and the video or podcast was blocked due to workplace administrator restrictions. I've never had an issue accessing it before, but now even on my personal device, the hospital is blocking content such as this podcast. Wow. So she's like, the attack on Christians is real. I find that this hospital has so much darkness and truly needs the light of Jesus. I'd also like to let you know that there are gender-affirming surgeries happening here. I have witnessed surgeries where they place an IUD in an adolescent woman that identifies as a male in order to suppress their natural hormone response. I have also witnessed gynecological yes, thank you, surgeries where they perform a hysterectomy for an adolescent transitioning from female to male. What is your opinion to nurses in these positions? I see both sides that I should refuse the assignments as a nurse in order to not mix with this behavior, or should I accept caring for these patients since I may be the only source of light they encounter? Any advice for Christian nurses in the society dealing with working in such liberal conditions and caring for patients for all backgrounds and beliefs?
Well, first of all, Lonaiah's got a really good friend, right?
Yep.
That is a high-level nurse. And what's the advice that she gave?
So I was talking to her the other night because I knew that this was coming up on the podcast and I just wanted to know her point of view. And she said, this is how she views her patients. Because she's like, I'm very respectful of their pronouns and I don't agree with all that. But she's like, I look at them and I say, I take all that away and anything else that's happening, I say, this is a person. Yeah. And Jesus loves this person. Absolutely. No matter anything else that's going on in their life or what they're confused at, our confusion is, or what they're thinking they're doing, they're still a person. And Jesus loves and cares for and died for this person. So in looking at that, she says, I just take everything else away. And I think this is a person. And all I'm going to do is be respectful, show them love, and be the light of Jesus that I can be. Right. And she actually started a prayer group at her hospital. She's like, I know I really wasn't supposed to do it, but she sent out an email. It was just like, hey, if you're a believer, I'm going to meet in this room at this time. Yeah. And she said, so she sent it out to 200 people. I think she said 75 people came. And they're like, if nothing else comes from this, it's just nice to know that there are other people in here fighting for the same things we are. Yep. But she did say, if I was that person and I was that nurse and I felt really strongly against doing that, I would talk to my supervisor and just say, hey, I don't agree with this. this kind of goes against my beliefs. And if you can, just not put me in surgeries with that. Yeah. And if they say, hey, you can't work anymore, she's like, there's plenty of other jobs out there for nurses. She's like, there's so many. They want you to be scared so you don't feel like you can say anything or do anything.
You know, there's, and I don't know, maybe the pay scale is different.
Yeah, I don't know either.
But if you would have to really seek the Lord. Yeah. That's between you and the Lord. And remember that your number one thing is to feed your family. Mm-hmm. Okay? The Bible says that if you don't feed your family, you're an infidel.
Right.
All right. So, you know, what I'm saying is, if you have, you know, you're in a family situation, you have children, you have to have that income. You know, you decide to suddenly just up and go change vocations. It may not. You're going to need the Lord to tell you to do that. All right. I would. My number one thing would be to feed my family. And it's just like with your friend, you know, they're people, you have authority, you can pray, you're actually touching them.
Yeah.
Nobody can control what you say under your breath, right? Over them.
We talked about that too. She's like, my friend, she's like, when I'm in those rooms, you have a mask on. She's like, I just pray in tongues.
Right.
And she's like, I use my position to take ground in that area, and I'm like in the battlefield right now. Yeah. And that's what I'm doing. I'm just a soldier for God in that field.
And maybe they're planting something in this boy that wants to be a girl, or vice versa, that you don't agree with, but you can plant a spiritual seed in that very same thing. Yeah. And that's why I would not be so quick to get up on my high horse. It's kind of like this thing here. Yeah. You know, like, okay, then just stop going to all stores. Right. Stop buying all coffee and stop buying all clothes, because you're going to find out they all at this point are satanic. Okay. Well, in my many of them. And I'm just saying here, you've got to feed your family. That is my opinion. You can disagree with me. And if somebody out there is going to say, oh, I think she should quit. Sure. I'd like to see you do it. Right. I'd like to see you do it. You know, you're on your high horse here saying you should quit. You should not be doing that. Right. I don't know that you trained to do that, you know, and I might sound ignorant, but, you know, I see nurses at the dermatology clinic I go to. Mm-hmm. You know, they're not. Yeah. Do you get what I'm saying? Yeah. You know, where you go, like people with my shade of skin, you know, you have to go. I got to go get checked every 6 months. Mm-hmm. And they look over my body or whatever. And, you know, there's nurses there. Right? They're not doing surgeries for that. Yeah. And I don't know if that's a big change in the pay. I have no idea. But there are other areas that you can work as a nurse if you don't feel.
God will honor you if you decide to step away. He will.
Do you remember?
But you got to hear from God. That's why I'm not telling you.
Right.
One, you know, it's got to be the Lord. It's got to be the Lord. But the number one thing is you have to take care of your family.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Do you remember the Satanist, one of those satanic priests that got
we talked about him.
Affected by a woman, a Christian, who
at
just
a radio
loved
show.
Him, that just gave him a hug.
You're right.
Loved him. Didn't preach at him.
He was like the president of the Satanic Temple in like New Zealand or something. Right. Remember?
Oh, we played that. Yeah, we did. We played that.
Yeah, being part of carrying the love of God with you is going to be as big of a thing as you can ever do. And you know, I would say pray as you are quietly, not maybe, you know, upfront about it, but praying that any lie that is telling them that they are not good enough or valuable.
Yeah.
To live life as God created them, to just pray against those lies and pray for the love of God to overwhelm their hearts.
You might be the only point of contact those people have.
Yeah. Right.
But I mean, I did put myself in the position and thought, what would I do if I was
with
in
your
that
three
position?
kids in school, and you've got to pay bills.
Yeah.
Right.
And I was a nurse, and I had to go subject myself.
And I'm not saying you're going check to check, but going check to check. Right. Do you get, or whatever?
Yes, I did. Okay. I thought about that. I thought that would be really hard.
Yep.
And I mean, to anybody,
you got a frontline position right there.
Yes, you do have a frontline position. And it's not easy. It's not always easy being.
Just like the teacher that wrote in.
Yes. But I always go back to Esther, and I'm like, you know what? She for such a time as this. Like God calls you to the places you are
Yeah.
for the time you're supposed to be there.
Yeah.
So
So
just have to follow your
in that
peace.
environment and here in those environments, I would be less inclined. I suppose the Holy Spirit could say, go to your leadership.
Right.
But then, you know, I've heard plenty of stories about nurses being marked, nurses not getting nurses that refuse the vaccine, blah, blah, blah,
I
blah,
have
blah.
a friend who,
and I'm just saying, like, that, you know, I personally, I would keep doing what you're doing. Sorry to offend anyone. She's got to feed her family. We don't know how, you know, we don't know her situation. And if the Lord tells you get out, you say, Lord, I need, then you start applying, start applying at different types of clinics where there's a lot of places that you can't do those kind of surgeries.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Yeah.
a lot of areas to work in. Right.
Right.
For sure.
In the nursing industry. So you would have to do it carefully if the Lord told you to do that. And I'm not telling you what to do one way or another. We're just giving you suggestions. We're also letting you know what another person
has said.
says that has to deal with the same thing that you have to
I have a
deal
few
with.
friends who are in the medical field. And I mean, I have a good friend who works at North Memorial and they are marked. And I mean, this person was walking on the street and when masks were like mandated and she had people watching her and they wrote her up because she didn't have her mask on when she was in her car in the parking lot on her way out and they wrote her up. So I mean you are marked, but also like she's still there. God's protected her.
Yeah.
And she's found a group of people who listen to this podcast. Hey. And they are believers and they all stand together. And it's knowing you have people that are also in your same position doing what you're doing.
And look at it like you are on the front lines of the war.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you're not there, there's nobody there. There ain't nobody in that room praying in tongues. There ain't nobody nobody praying over that person.
Right.
That's getting that surgery. And I tell you what, if it wasn't you, it's going to be somebody else.
Right.
Right. But they're not going to be putting in that spiritual seed that you're doing. This is all
the
opinion.
kingdom of God.
You can agree.
Wherever
You can
go.
agree to
the
disagree.
love of God.
Right.
You can agree to disagree. That's fine. We're just
agree
trying
with
to.
you.
We're just trying to tell you. Well, I'm
Right.
just in case people write in. So
Yeah, speaking of people who write in, I just want to say thank you to we have some consistent people who send in articles. So I just want to say thank you to Daniel, Kathy, Chris, Joe and Linda, Judy, Megan, Jake, Laura, and Jeff. Because they are constantly sending things in.
Thanks for that,
And
guys.
it is not annoying. I love it. And sometimes it just affirms things that we have on our list that I'm kind of like, should we, shouldn't we? And these people will send in, hey, have you heard this? And I'm like, okay, good, that's confirmation.
Right.
all these people are great.
They are great.
But Daniel always
Daniel
has
is-
something that
Daniel
I have
is.
not seen yet.
Yes, I
Always
agree.
has
He does.
something
Daniel is.
that I have not seen. So, because I check that thing daily, or scan it daily.
Yeah, you
so
do.
thank you guys all for writing in. Either way, whether if it's critical or if it's not, thank you. We appreciate all our listeners, all our viewers on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Rumble. Okay, please remember to subscribe. Subscribing is very important. I had someone tell me, I believe, do we have 1,700 subscribers?
Almost. We're over 1,600
So
on
we're
YouTube.
We're climbing slowly.
Yay.
And so thank you. Please
Thank
do
you.
subscribe.
Yep.
It helps us if you subscribe.
Share those
And,
videos. Share those podcasts.
And we pray because you are the righteousness of God in Jesus Christ apart from your deeds, good or bad. That's what that means. Okay? That you are surrounded with the favor of God as with a shield in the name of Jesus Christ. God bless you. See you next week with James Tan. Don't forget those questions.
No.
If you're still here, thanks.